with the puzzle. And sometimes these ways are rewarding, and they may go to nucleus accumbens or anything, which Semir is always reminds me of, or they may not. But it also may be the time that you're involved in this kind of process. It may not be. But you see, I'm trying to avoid the notion of beauty, of emotion, because this, much as I think emotion is an important part of work of art, it's not much emotion here, really. Yeah. You see, can we go to the next one? I'll just try it and see if we can do it. No, the next one. You see now, look at this, disaster. You can see straight away. It's a disaster because you have this kind of shimmering surface, but probably if you were to measure the saccadic eye movements, you would find a much less active process. Probably, I don't know, but again, you could test it. There is not any of the necessity to cognitively assemble what is going on around this picture. These are the kinds of engagements which I think are important for the aesthetic experience. And we wouldn't understand it unless we had the elements of knowledge that we now have very carefully plotted by the mirror neuron group. There's been some work on imitation, but we couldn't get there without the basic elements of the way in which, this is where we all agree, the basic elements in which certain areas of the brain function and how they relate to each other. So that's my proposal for aesthetic response.
So we put some point more. We don't want to be reductionist, but focusing on something like here the motor response and the possibility of this sort of empathy between the viewer and the observer can be a focus to which start to analyze art, not then to say what is art, this is not, because we don't have the response. But maybe is it good to start from something like Gallese and Friedberg has done with motor response? Or what should we do? I'm asking to the artist and the neuroscientist as well to work in this direction. This, I think, is heuristic. It's finding out possibilities of not of finding out some through, but of researching. So
I have a question. We are discussing about the perspective of the viewer in respect to the work of art. But I was just thinking while you were talking, it could be that the aesthetic experience that we try is just a mirror reflection on ourselves. I mean, when you stand in front of a work of art, or you stand in a work of art, because now we are surrounded, you just tap on art, you touch it, you hear it, it's everything. So it might be that there is the case in which the art is doing something to you. I was thinking about something that you always quote also in your papers. When you are born and you are a child and you don't have the perception of yourself. I mean, you don't perceive yourself as separated from the world. So you start building up your border between yourself and the world through the interaction with the others and the objects and everything surrounding you. So it might be the case that when art is art, so it gives you something back, like letting you know yourself through this process of building yourself up. So interacting with the work of art, you have something back that gives you more, gives you a perception, or like a redefinition of something.
Completely,
which
I totally agree, but we want to know why this happens.
Yeah, I know. So it would be good to know.
This is the
but
sort of worry that I have about the worry that I had about Semir and what the worried you. These are all very nice notions, and we can agree with them.
No,
but it's a hypothesis which needs to be tested.
Yeah, I know, but we can
I don't deal with notions. I deal with facts only. And the interesting thing, for example, I mean. The
and interpretation.
Questo is a matter of interpretation.
I give you the facts, you can interpret them. Now there is a fact, by the way, which you have never interpreted, nor have you, which is very relevant to, and nor has anyone else. In our study of beauty, we found that the motor cortex is always active. Now, you've never referred to this
I
fact.
just refer to it in what I said now. Anyway, never mind. Okay.
I mean, let us suppose the point that Ludovica is raising. Some things give you something back, others do not. Well, maybe supposing the things that do give you something back activate another area of the brain. Let us say, for the sake of argument, the orbitofrontal cortex. Well, you've got a nice distinction. Why would you not think that is a route towards an explanation? This is what I don't understand from you.
No, we agree. Are you not understanding what I am understanding?
What are you understanding of what I
No,
understand?
that orbitofrontal cortex contributes to aesthetic experience. But
No.
Can I make a
yeah.
comment on the way I understand your definition of art? I'm Christine Massel. I'm curator at the
it wasn't
Pompidou.
a definition of art. It was
No,
an
but-
attempt to find an account of aesthetic experience,
Yeah.
but not of art.
Yeah, but just I want to maybe deepen the conversation dealing with art, yeah? Because what I hear is here is very much about aesthetic, and for me, art can not be reduced to aesthetic. I can have an aesthetic experience in nature or in front of you if I find you attractive or not, you know, or in any place where I eat or I meet people. But it's not, for me, art is not reduced to aesthetic. Art is an experience that go far beyond aesthetic, and sometimes some artists they are not even interested in aesthetics anymore. There is conceptual art, there is performative art that is based on ideas. And I think what we miss here is that we are too much focused on cognitive and formalist definition of art, and we are not so much understanding some new practices of the modernity that was totally against this formalism, that was like anti-modernism, anti-painting, you know. And so our analysis of the reaction to the art is very cognitive. And for me, an artwork or making words, that is the title of this Biennale, is about meaning and something that goes beyond the form or the perception, the direct perception with the senses. And the meaning can come with some processes that are more mental than totally perceptual, like in a conceptual artwork. And the fiction that works create goes far beyond this aesthetical perception. So that is a point that I think we should consider in our conversation about art, to understand why we like works of art, for example. It's not only about these cognitive processes.
Okay. But I think both Vittorio and I have.
Cognitive is available on the market.
Exactly. We didn't find them.
Still too cognitive for you.
Yeah, but for example, when you were commented the Jeff Wall picture and you said this was about making something visible, I think Jeff Wall's work is absolutely not about making something visible. It's about something dealing with time and cinema and duration, and it's a very conceptual work about duration and image, and it's not about what we perceive in the image. Of course, there is a first effect of the image, but the core of his work, I mean, the way he's looking at the real is about his own reflection about duration, right? And that's what is interesting in his work, finally.
Right, but the power of those images, I think, stems exactly from the fact that he's able to condense an extended lapse of time within one single image. And why do we retrieve time in that static image? Because our motor system is involved. That's my point. So it's totally a bodily enterprise. There's nothing cognitive here. It's exactly the opposite of what I was trying to get across the board. This is not a cognitive enterprise. When I see Guts of Winds by Jeff Wall, I am so captured by that image, even if I don't know that it took ages to realize that image. I may even think that it was just a snapshot, which is not, clearly. But it is so powerful because it can squeeze time within one single static image. And what makes you able to recover the sense of time in that static image is precisely the fact that your motor system is fully engaged when you see that.
May I plead? May I
Yes.
plead for something?
Okay, well, okay, before here, because we finish here, and then, yeah.
I really do not understand the definition of cognitive. I'm completely lost here. What I mean? Why would?
Definition?
Well, let's have a definition. Why would conceptual art not be cognitive? I don't understand. I mean, I'm just trying to understand what is the definition of cognitive.
Who can give the answer?
Is the motor act not cognitive?
Is what?
Is the perception of the motor activity not cognitive? Seems to me that's cognitive.
Well, I would have thought it was. Yes.
What is the performance of the motor?
This is what I want to.
Well, the point is that to the extent that something can be named cognitive, to many people that qualifies as not being possibly motor. If it's cognitive, I mean, if you can get to any kind of abstraction by means of your own motor system, it has to be something outside the motor system. Even if you say, well, come on, it's area 6. Well, maybe it's slightly more anterior. Maybe it's prefrontal. Because the idea is that the motor system is a machinery to move your muscles, to move parts of your body that cannot possibly get to anything beside making a possible displacement of any part of your body. So if you can retrieve an intention, a goal, it cannot be motor. It has to be cognitive. So the border between what is bodily and what is cognitive is clearly blurred. But this is still an idea entertained by a minority of people.
But can one say, and I'm really asking the question because I don't understand,
Referees included.
there is such a thing as non-cognitive art? Is it possible to have non-cognitive art?
But this is not a claim. We must not
Perhaps
say that.
could
1 second, let's
Oh.
1 second, let's listen to everything.
well, perhaps we could go back to the concept of empathy, because the word empathy, as I believe in German, Einfühlung, came directly from the contemplation of a work of art. So it's rather interesting that art should perhaps come before science, or that the whole idea of empathy should, in many ways, also explain a lot of things that artists are doing today that refuse the formal kind of art, or what they call retinical art. A lot of artists absolutely don't want to have anything to do with retinical art.
Shant was saying I do anti-retinical art.
Yes, and they would and they talk about relational aesthetics. Well, relational aesthetics, as it's been formalized, as it's been discussed in aesthetics to do with art, I think is very reductive, to use a term applied to art theory. But I think your ideas on empathy and the mirror neurons are extremely interesting for implications of relational aesthetics. So,
A question for Vittorio, in a way. If you have embodied simulation as a basis for experience shared, shall we say, there are some people who won't be able to do the simulation. And I'm thinking of Patrick Haggard's work with capoeira dancers, where if you're a dancer, your appreciation is different because you've trained your embodied simulation as you've trained your body. So then we get onto the universality of art or not, because as soon as you're embodied your simulation, some people are experts, and art has become more and more appreciated by artists, particularly conceptual
I
art.
wouldn't like to be hung up to the metaphor of the mirror. The metaphor of the mirror was very useful to convey the message of what we were describing. But usually a mirror passively reflects what is facing the mirror. In our case, we are dealing with a mirror that metabolizes what is reflected. So the Haggard and colleague experiment has beautifully shown that both classic ballet dancers and capoeira dancer mirror the movement they see, be it capoeira or classic ballet. Nevertheless, the degree